Welcome to the Big Woods Bucks podcast. I'm your host, Hal Blood, sitting here again with my buddy Lee Shands.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Yeah. And deer season's right around the corner.
It is, and we got people that are asking questions. This is going to be like a question and answer one for us.
Yeah, we get these, we like them too. We like you writing questions, emailing and stuff, questions. And so hopefully we can take care of them maybe as we get them or as soon as we can. But anyways, we're going to take care of a few questions. And sometimes people ask a question, but maybe three other people have asked the same thing. So we're kind of basically the way we're going to do it is read a question from one person. And if you're listening and you ask the same thing, you'll get your answer. And the people that didn't ask the question, you were thinking about the question, so they'll get their answer too.
Yeah.
All right.
All good.
What do we got first?
Well, this was a good question. This is from a fellow named Ethan Persons. And it says, hunting in Maine and Onyx, which parcels are okay to hunt? And I thought we'd answer that, but also go into how land management has changed in the years you and I have been doing it, and just kind of touch on that.
Yeah, the funny thing about here in Maine, and I've known it for the years with people coming up, almost everywhere in the country, it's private land you don't go on.
Right.
Everybody's looking for the state land or public land or whatever they call it. And in Maine, it's almost the opposite, really, because
we're spoiled, really.
We're spoiled, and Maine has, believe it or not, as big as Maine is, has very little public land, what they call public land. And the reason for that is back when Maine separated from Massachusetts, they needed to raise revenue to run the state, and the only resource they had was land. So they sold it. Good move, huh?
Yep. So
they sold off large parcels of land, mainly in northern Maine, because southern Maine was pretty well populated by then, but that's how they raised revenue. And a lot of that land, or not a lot of it, some of it is still in some of the heirs to the original landowners and stuff, and some of it's changed hands. It's gone, I think, through a whole, kind of come full circle maybe, but it was individuals that bought it and for family legacy land, and then paper companies or timber companies, mainly paper companies actually was first. Yep. Great Northern, International Paper.
Mead Paper.
They were buying big tracts of land for pulp, cutting their wood for the pulp and stuff. So, but it was always a tradition. There was so much land that people just nobody cared. Those big landowners didn't care if people hunted their land. All they wanted was the trees on it, right? So it kind of became a tradition here in Maine where private land almost seems like public land anywhere else. And since then, it's changed hands, some of it several times. And the state actually has bought back some over the years, but not much, huh? Very little. There's a township here and there, or half a township.
It's the only time, though, that I ever vote for the bond issues.
To buy more land.
Yeah, in the fall when we vote, most of those bond issues, because I'm a conservative and I don't like to spend money, I don't vote for most of them. But if they're going to buy a decent piece of land somewhere, I'm like, well, that might be one more place my grandkids can hunt.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it.
Yeah. So, but a lot of people come up and they inquire about it, and they think they can only hunt on public land. Well, if you were trying to hunt up here on public land, if everybody did that, there'd be a hunter behind every tree. Yeah. But you don't need to do that here. Basically, the law in Maine is if the land is not visually posted, you can hunt there. And it's either got to be posted with a no hunting or a no trespassing sign, or now it's kind of, I think, become kind of a national thing, those purple horizontal
Purple
stripes.
stripes, yeah.
And it's got to be like is it 50 yards?
Ooh, yeah, probably.
50 yards, I think, in the whole perimeter. Like a lot of people would post along their road because it's easy. I get why they do it, along a farm field or something. But technically, you have to post the entire perimeter of your land to be legally posted where nobody can go. And obviously, the big landowners aren't going to post 1 million acres of land, So it stayed that way. And it's great for us. I mean, it's really, we're thankful for the landowners that have always kept it that way. So.
And basically, when you get, I don't know if it's the northern half, but pretty close to half, the northern half of Maine, you can hunt at least 80 or 90% of it. It's a lot of land.
Up here, really, most of the places you're going to find a posted land is going to be around the towns. Right. Obviously, they don't want people coming up north and hunting in town when there's millions of acres to hunt everywhere else. So don't worry about finding a place to hunt. There's plenty of place to go and hunt, and which on the other hand makes it a little daunting for people, because then they're like, well, if I can hunt anywhere, where am I going to start, right? They don't. You got to get started somewhere, and that comes into scouting.
But that comes back to the Onyx. The original question was, he was asking about how does Onyx tie in with it. Onyx will tell you most of the time. It'll tell you who does own the land. But again, if you show up there, if it's not posted, visibly posted, you can hunt there. And even like sometimes you'll come up against gates, and we used to not see hardly any gates in this country. But now there are some gates. But again, if they don't want you in there, they'll post on the gate, stay out, or no trespassing. But there's a lot of places up here where there's a gate, and as long as you walk in, they're fine with you walking and doing it.
Might be a gate, or just they block the road with
dig a big ditch or rocks or whatever. Sometimes those are the best places because most people don't want to walk.
Yeah, a lot of times when they get done logging in a road, and if they're not going to go back there and log for 10 or 20 years, they pull all the culverts out and
I had a little honey hole. This is kind of funny, but it's only 5 miles out of town of Jackman. It was pretty close, but the bridge was out on the stream, so you had to walk across the stream to get in there. So I guided in there for years, and my client shot some nice deer in there, and I never really had too much company in there just because you had to walk through the stream to get to it.
Yeah.
And then a few years ago, they put that bridge in, and I've hated it ever since because now everybody and his brother is in there.
Yeah. They might take it out again someday, but yeah. So, anyways, the boundaries you'll see but they're going to be big. You're not going to like zoom in on a place and see all these boundary lines. It's because one landowner might own 1 million acres, or 100,000 acres, or 200. I mean, they're huge pieces of land. So I wouldn't worry about like Lee said. Even though it's a boundary there, and you might read who owns it. If you drive there and there's no posted signs, then you can still hunt it, And
I think it goes back to bring it back to Onyx. We've touched on this a few times, but it really is the best way if you're unfamiliar with an area, and especially if it's been cut over some. Get your Onyx out, find some streams. They don't even have to be big streams. Find some small streams, get on the side of them and scout those, walk those. They'll get you in behind those nasty cuts that are stove up and things. And it's also, most of the time, that's where we're finding our signposts and our scrape lines. So,
here's a few words from our sponsors. They're all top-notch people. We're glad to have them aboard. Make sure you support them. That's what keeps us going. Being the low-tech guy I am, there's one thing I've learned to embrace with technology, and it's my Onyx. I used to carry maps and GPS when it finally came out and stuff, but the Onyx has eliminated that because I've got my GPS in my phone now with my Onyx app. I can mark everything in that. It's helpful that I can show other people by putting a pin in if I want to send somebody to a place. Being a guide, that's important, I can give them the pin, put it in there, I text it to them, whatever. So if you want to get your Onyx, get your Big Woods Bucks code, BWB, and get you 20% off, but I highly recommend it. Give you a little update. Skinner Sights. We all know they're the best site going, but it's a great company because Andy and the crew there are innovative, and they're always thinking up either new models to make a site for, improve the sites, making mounts for scopes, and now they've come on with their own line of scopes and red dots. Whatever Andy does in the company, it's top-notch, first quality, and they stand behind everything, and we're glad to have them as a partner, and we hope you'll try their sites, and you can trust your life with those, and they're going to get you the game. So get your Skinner Sights, and you can trust me that you're going to be glad you did. Just wanted to talk a little bit about minus 33 in the wool they have, which I believe is best wool going. Whether it's base layers or your socks or whatever you're wearing, you got to have wool. I've been stressing that for people for years, to wear your wool, whether it's the outerwear or even your base layers and socks. I've been to the tour of the plant, see how they make their socks, and it's quality, the fit is right, and they're going to be long lasting. I've got socks I've had now for several years, and they look like I'll have them for several years more before they even think about wearing out. So I trust my life to wool, and you can too. Minus 33. All right, back to the podcast.
Yeah, the other thing you can find on the Onyx, and you can actually now pay more for the, they call, if you buy the Elite one, you get everywhere and stuff, but sometimes the aerial photography, if you look at, you can go and look at the topography, topo map part of it, but if you switch to the satellite imagery, well, that's not going to be current necessarily. Sometimes you hit it just right, and depending on the year, and they made some cuts, it'll be on that. It'll show up that year. So if they cut in the wintertime and you're going to go next fall, you might see those on your Onyx. But I've found sometimes there's a cut there and it might be 5 years and it still isn't on there yet. So, and it's random. You'll never know where it's going to be. It's just however they took the satellite imagery and overlapped it. But you can buy the membership now that gives you the up-to-date. It's within 30 days. And it's a good tool for some people if you want to use it to find out where new cuts are for whatever reason. But just keep in mind with that one, and they tell you when you go to sign up for it, that it's not going to be as clear. In other words, like on the regular one, you can zoom right down to, you could see a mud puddle in the road when they snap the picture. It won't be that way on this system. At least you'll get, you zoom down to a certain level and you can see a new road or a new cut or something. So there's all kinds of ways to use it, but like you said, for streams and stuff, you'll see them bogs on some of them, and I like to overlap the they call it the hybrid, where you can put the contour lines.
That's what I'm usually on.
Yep, you overlay the contours on the satellite imagery, and then if it's a ridge or what, you can see the elevations and stuff, and you can on the topography, but if you go on the satellite, you don't know. It looks flat, right? It's a picture. So I use it that way, and then you can figure out your ridges. You can see how steep it is. And again, like I've told people before, the one thing good about it that I really like is you can see the difference in the softwood and the hardwood. It's a different shade of green. The softwood, we call black growth, looks black. It's darker green, and then the hardwoods looks like a lighter green. So if the transition zones usually are in the edge of that, it's a pretty good way to look at that and say, I'm going to follow this edge, right? You might go put a few pins. If you're going to scout an area, you said, well, I'm going to try this spot, and you see some streams or whatever and ridges or whatever, just put a few points that look interesting to you just by studying it and saying it looks like it might be a, travel corridor here, and then just go in the woods and look for that, Really does up the game of scouting quite a bit, especially for new people and people that haven't hunted the big woods. It's a great way to get started.
Nothing beats boots on the ground for sure, but at least now you can, I wouldn't even, like years ago, you might have to drive to a spot and walk it to figure it out. Now I can figure out before I get there, before I drive 10 miles on a road to look at something, your Onyx is going to be able to tell you if it's worth for me going there. It definitely cuts down on your lost time.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Good question. Get your Onyx, sign up. Don't forget your BWB code, and you'll get your 20% off.
This next one, I don't know that we've touched on this, but this is an interesting question, and I think we should cover it. And for me, it's going to be a little different, my personal pack when I'm deer hunting compared to my pack when I'm guiding moose hunters and bear hunters. But a guy wants us to touch on in emergency situation, what do we carry for, a first aid kit and things like that. So go ahead and start us off.
Yeah. Well, part of that I would add to that would be always carry something to get a fire going with. At least 2 ways to carry to start a fire, because sometimes that can keep you out of an emergency situation. If you fell in the water or whatever else, you had to, maybe even broke your leg and you got to spend the night. If you got something to make a fire, you're not going to freeze to death anyway. So I'll throw that in there to carry fire starters. And then you can basically, some of the stuff I carry anyways, like if somebody broke a leg or whatever or needed a tourniquet or something, I carry them web straps for my dragon. You can use all that stuff for you. Some people like to carry the paracord. I particularly like the braided nylon. I think it seems to be ruggeder than a paracord and stuff, but that's what I carry. It's still the same diameter, 1/4 inch or whatever it is, and I carry that. And then really, I've always got some Band-Aids in there, but that's minor. That's not like an emergency situation. And I have some small kits. I don't carry one for myself, like a little first aid kit, because my motto's go light, go often. Maybe I should, I don't know, but I don't. But you can always, if you got to stop the bleeding or something, you can rip off your t-shirt or cut your long johns off or do something to do that and use your webbing to stop something. And, but I think little things, guiding's different, like you said. One thing I learned about guiding is when some people, how they're excited when they show up. Older people, I've always asked them, because I am one, if they take medication. I don't know how many times guys have forgot their medication. You've probably had it happen too. You get up to remote camp, or even if sometimes they have to take it during the day or whatever, and I just check with them for that. And
we put that in their list before they come on a hunt with us. We send them a paper and say, if you're on any medication, make sure you bring it with you and go over this list before you come.
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't know of anything else you'd need for first aid. I've seen people, I think it's personality driven, that some people think they need a great big first aid kit for every contingency going. Yeah, maybe that's good, but you still got to lug it all day, every day. And I've been roaming the woods up here for 45 years, and I've never been in a situation where if I had a first aid kit, I'd have been better off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've patched people up a little bit with a rag, or, even you can carry actually duct tape. Electrical tape and duct tape works good, but I remember Steve Coleman always carried, when he was foresting, he always had a small roll of electrical tape in his pocket. He'd take one that was way down so he wouldn't be carrying the whole big roll, in his front pocket, you would see in all of his pants, you'd see a round spot in his pocket where that was always in there. Because I think he might have been a little accident prone. I don't know how many, he was always cutting his fingers and hands and stuff. And all he'd do was, he wouldn't even put a rag or a gauze on it. He'd just tape it up with electrical tape and keep on going.
Yeah.
So
the only things that I'd add to that, I'm pretty much the same way. But as I've gotten older, never used to worry about it, but I wear glasses now. I carry an extra pair of glasses in my pack because you never know, you might break them or lose them.
yeah.
And then a space blanket. We didn't mention that, but especially for myself, I'm not really worried about the space blanket. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But if I'm guiding people, I got one of them little space blankets that folds right up into nothing, because that could, help you in a certain situation. But then the other thing that I have carried, whether it's for myself or the clients, I don't take any medication, and I hardly ever hurt myself. I've talked on the podcast before about things that my father taught me. My father was like me. He was a bull and he could get stuff done, but he was careful about not hurting himself. And I've done that. I've been pretty bulletproof my whole career. But if I'm going to hurt myself, what it's probably going to be is I picked up something that I shouldn't have, or let's say I dragged a deer a long ways and was bent over. I do carry some ibuprofens in my pack because sometimes it's pretty nice at the end of the day if your back's bothering you or you did something to your knee or whatever.
Yeah.
If I take a few ibuprofens, but that's about the only thing I'd add to what you said was the space blanket and the ibuprofens.
Lee said he doesn't take any medications, but he just turned 60. He's going to be taking medication sooner or later. Everybody is.
Yeah. I hope not.
Yeah. There's hardly anybody that escapes it now. It depends how long you're going to live, but
right.
Because back in the old days, everybody died when they were 65 to 70. Everybody was dead, and probably it was high blood pressure, but now you can get pills for it, so
yeah,
people live a lot longer. But the other thing I would add, one last thing to this, and we'll wrap that one up, was I carry in a Ziploc. I carry everything in a little Ziploc in there, but I carry a little bit of toilet paper, and then I carry a little pack of those baby wipes or something, but you can use those for a bandage too.
Yep.
I mean, the tissue and the baby wipes have got alcohol in it or something, so you could clean something up. So if you got that, really, I don't know why you really need a first aid kit that you need to perform surgery with,
And it might be different too, I guess, if you were in a situation like, we're talking about being guides, hunting guides. If you were a canoe guide that was taking people down the Allagash and stuff, you'd have a first aid.
But
you'd have a first aid kit in your canoe, but not in the hunting guide's pack.
I always kept one at camp. I have one in my remote camp now. I leave it there for all the guys. I got a nice first aid kit there, and I always take one on like when we do our remote moose hunts, and I had them at deer camps when I did remote. You have one in camp, anyways. You don't have to carry it with you. For all you big woods buck hunters, if you're looking for an ideal base camp for hunting in the big woods, in the Adirondacks and Tug Hill, you got to call our friends at Christmas and Associates. For over 35 years, they've been providing land and camps to sportsmen, 5 to 50 acres, rivers, streams, and ponds in some of the best locations, affordable prices, and in-house financing with low monthly payments. They can even build their Adirondack-style cabins on property you already own. For more info, call Christmas and Associates at 1-800-229-7843 or go to landandcamps.com. Visit Christmas and Associates on Facebook. All right.
This next one, I like this next one too. This one is, we can spend a little time on this. He said, I'd like to hear you guys talk about hunting around marshes, beaver ponds, or swamps, how to hunt them, and tell some buck stories that involved swamps and marshes.
Yeah. How long we got?
Well, I don't know. Till Scott's. We only got one question after this one, and I'm going to do that one. So we got some time we can spend on this one.
Yeah. What was it again?
It was
around the swamps.
yeah, hunting around swamps and marshes and beaver ponds. How do you hunt them? And talk about some stories that involved swamps and marshes.
You're going to have to answer that because I don't hunt around them because they're too hard to drag out.
Well, we did up when we were up in Ontario. We certainly did.
We had to, but yeah. I mean, I've hunted around, you get into, up here you really, if you're going to hunt really in just a swamp, you got to understand you're going to stay there because the swamps aren't endless here. There's swamps and then you might be going through some hardwoods and stuff, but in the deer, I think the question, comes about because in a lot of places, the deer hide in the swamps, right? Because that's where nobody goes. So if you're thinking about it that way, where you hunt and there's swales and the deer go out there for the day and bedding areas and all of that, if you're going to hunt in the big woods, it's not like that. Yes, they'll go out across the cedar bog or a swale. They'll do all of that stuff. And, I've come out to some of them little swale things in the woods and, you might see a deer feeding around the edge and munching on a little bit of something. But I don't ever spend the day hunting around a swamp thinking I'm going to really do something there. Because I can think back at times in all the years, I don't know as I can remember a time when I end up out in a swamp and actually jump a buck out in the swamp. Because that's where he stayed. They don't, especially an open one like a swale one. I have, when they get up into a cedary or a spruce bog or something, if there's a little higher spot they can lay on. Well, yeah, you might find one like that, but I don't particularly just hunt around them.
Part of that question is too, we've talked about this. A couple of things I want to touch on was the way that we hunt. We're going in the woods and we're putting on miles. So you might be in a swamp for half an hour or whatever, and then you're through it and you're going up on a ridge or whatever. And it goes back to that. It was kind of like an old wives' tale about swamp bucks and mountain bucks.
Yeah.
Well, the bucks that we're hunting up here, they're on the mountain part of the day and they're down in the swamp part of the day, and they're wherever they're going to be because they're traveling through that. But it isn't like they live in a swamp or only live on the mountain. They're traveling just like we are. So I think part of that enters into it. But I will say, remember we had Paul Laney on probably like a month ago.
Yeah.
And we talked about down where he lived, there's a lot of water. Grand Lake Stream over and down what we call down east, there's a lot of water over there. And there's some guys, Paul said he wished he'd never said anything about it, but he wanted to get back to some remote areas and get away from pressure. So he was getting in a canoe and canoeing out into those cranberry bogs and stuff like that. And he was shooting some nice bucks, and he probably shouldn't have posted pictures of them. But if you want to hunt a swamp, if there's no snow, probably the best way to hunt one is get in a deadwater in a canoe and get back.
Yeah, I think those bucks, and we don't have that kind of stuff here, but those bucks I think are there mainly because that's where, there is feed there. And there is feed around swamps. I don't want people to get the idea that because it's anywhere you've got an open swale or something, it lets sunlight in, and there's going to be some kind of stuff that's apt to grow around the edges they can feed on. And in that case, some cases, it is cranberries and stuff. But
we learned that when we were in Ontario. When we first started going to Ontario, the part that we were hunting hadn't been cut. It was pretty much, virgin woods. So we were hunting around the marshes and the beaver bogs and stuff because that's where the sunlight was and that's where the brush was.
Remember,
mature trees.
Every one of them around the edges had that red osier dogwood, that small brush.
They love that.
And we have that everywhere here too. And that does grow here around. You get out around them bogs and stuff, you'll find that red osier out there. So, yeah, there's feed there. In some cases, and it depends. When we're talking about the big woods, that's a hard part of it because there's so much variabilities. You would have to just go to hunt you'd have to go kind of figure out what the deer are doing there. You know what I mean? Find out, and you can do it like Paul does it in a canoe, or anybody could. They're going to cross water. If you're in some kind of a stream, they don't cross everywhere. There's certain places they cross streams. Usually it's shallow with, either shallow or not much current or whatever. Quite often it's in the sharp bends in the stream. You know how when it makes a bend, it slows up, and usually the gravel kind of pushes out like a gravel bar on it. Those are the places that deer crossings are more likely. I think maybe it's just because it's a point, on one side it's making a point, and they just kind of funnel down on that point and get across and keep going. But yeah, so anyways, there's a lot of ways to hunt that. And I think the question asked about some stories about killing one in a bog, and the only thing I can come up with would be that big tall tine one we shot years ago that scored 184 or something. That was a cedar bog, though, in the woods, and that he wasn't there because it was a bog. It had wet ground and cedar bog in there, but it also had dry ground, and it was just a softwood piece. So I didn't really relate that as really hunting in a bog. It was just hunting where the deer sign was, the signposts and stuff.
Hey, Hal here. I just want to take a minute to talk about our wool gear. Our Big Woods Bucks wool gear it's the best value there is on the market. We have 100% virgin wool clothing, whether it's our packs, pants, jackets, whatever. The virgin wool it's the natural fiber from the sheep, and it wraps into a tight thread. That's what makes it waterproof, pretty much wind resistant, and comfortable to wear. It's quiet for hunting, especially in the big woods. You can't find anything better than wool clothing. So we have ours. It's all made in USA with all U.S. accessories and everything. We've got years of experience guiding, and it's thought that's going into this stuff. So we've tried to keep the average hunter in mind and kept the price point at where people can afford it. We hope you enjoy it. Wear your woolies. Caught in his death.
I have one good beaver bog story. I got a bad one when we were up in Ontario. I remember I crossed a beaver bog and ended up costing me $1 up there. But I have here in Maine, I shot a nice buck once, and it was a good thing that I shot him. It was opening day, but we had snow, and he weighed 201, so it was a good thing I shot him on opening day, because it was probably, within a week he probably was going to be under that.
By the end of the week, yeah.
But I tracked him, and I knew I'd been in that piece of woods before, and he went down. It's gone now. It was a huge beaver dam, long. I don't know how, it must have been close to 100 yards across. It was a big, long one. And he crossed on that beaver bog, and I thought...
On the dam.
Yeah.
It's usually what they do.
And I'm thinking, if I cross that, he's probably, on the other side of it, there was a piece of softwood that would be a good place to bed down. And I thought, he's probably over there, and if he's bedded down in that, he's going to hear me coming. And it was a little bit sketchy. If I tried to walk across it, I might end up in the beaver bog too. So I very rarely leave a track. Sometimes I do, but very rarely. But I remember thinking, I'm going to go around that beaver bog and then just come back and get back on the track and see how that works. And it was one of them things that sometimes it's just better to be lucky than good. I walked around that beaver bog, was walking back to pick up the track, and I looked in the woods in front of me, and he was bedded down right where I thought he might be. Never heard me coming, and I shot him right in his bed. He was looking back on that beaver bog. You make educated guesses. I'm sure you've done the same thing. Maybe not on a beaver bog, but you think, I think this is what he's going to do. And that time he did. Sometimes they outsmart you, but that time he did just exactly what I thought he was going to do, and I made the right call by not going across the beaver bog. So sometimes you just got to go with your gut.
Yeah. Yeah. In experience,
Best teacher.
we can answer all the questions and kind of get you started, but you got to get out there and just get your own experiences and learn that way. There's no substitute for that.
All right, we'll move on to this last one. I'll
I
talk
thought there
about.
was another one about starting from the beginning. Didn't we have a question like that?
Well, up at the very top, I thought we.
Yeah. What is that one?
All right. Well, we'll do that one first. Okay. Just said maybe you could touch on in detail how to get started on hunting in the Maine big woods if you've never been there before. And Scott had written down some stuff, but go ahead. We can answer those.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a broad question how to get started. I mean, it's a big, broad question because one person's definition of getting started might not be another person's. To me, getting started is making the decision to do it, and then you got to do everything from getting the right equipment and clothing and gun and all of that. That's all part of getting started. So I don't really know exactly. And we can't get detailed in it because we'd be here for 4 hours trying to get into the details. So the overview of it is, and I don't know if this particular guy that answered the question would be, to me, I tell people, because I get a lot of questions, and I love getting questions, and I answer them as quickly as I can so they don't get by me. But I can usually tell if somebody has a question, I can tell whether or not they've read my first book, which is the teaching book, it's what he's asking, how to get started. That's why I wrote that book. It was everything about hunting in the big woods. So I would answer the question first is to get my first book and read it. And then you can ask questions about things in there you don't understand, right? But I thought I spelled it out pretty simply, and I know for some people, everybody's different the way they take things, and I'm not trying to be, trying to brush anything off, but that would be a start. Get that first book and read it. You might read it and decide, I don't really think I want to do this if I gotta go through all that, so that would be a first start. And then I've got some lessons on the YouTube there, tips and all of that. We all do. We got basic things to look at on there. And again, some people don't go on YouTube. I don't know if the guy that asked this question does or not, but I did one not too long ago. We've got on there about scouting from a topo map. Because if you're going to hunt in the big woods, you got to be fairly proficient at maps of one kind or another. It could be topo maps, or it could be maps on the Onyx too. Some people still use a GPS with a map thing on it, but I would say the next step would be is to maybe look at that and try to scout out how you can get started on by looking at a map and then get a compass and if you don't want to get proficient with the compass and I do have a compass course on there too somewhere on our YouTube. There's a compass course, but basically you need a compass. I always tell people, don't rely on a GPS or a Onyx or anything. It's electrical equipment, can fail. Have a physical compass. Some people like the ball ones you put on. I like just a little directional one I put in my pocket. And then if you're going north, south, east, west anyways. And that's half the battle, And you can go in, if you go in one off on the road and you check the road, always check which side the road runs, even if you got a GPS or whatever. And you're going to mark your truck, check that. If it runs east to west, you're going to the north, you're going to come out in some southerly direction. And that's all we did in the old days. And Sometimes we didn't have any idea how far it was going to be, but we knew if we walked far enough in that direction, we'd get out, right? So map and compass, or map, compass, map, whether you put it together, that you're going to have that really to get started, however you want to do it. And what else might there be?
Well, one of the things that, and I'm glad Scott put that down so that we didn't skip it, I really do think one of the best things to teach people, and we've started including this in our moose stuff now, is you gotta use your wool. Now, they don't necessarily have to use wool during moose season because they might be too hot, but it's got to be something that's soft and quiet. We have guys show up in Carhartts and jeans and stuff, and that's nothing to hunt. And the woods in Maine has got so much brush and raspberry bushes and stuff, you just can't hunt in it. But if you're going to come up here and hunt deer in the snow, you got to have some good wool gear.
Yep.
If we could give anybody some really good advice, is get yourself some decent footwear, a decent set of wool pants, and a wool jacket, and some wool gloves, because nothing else, I don't care what anybody says, nothing else is as good.
I think we provide all that stuff for them.
Yeah,
Not that we're trying to hawk everything, but that's the reason we provide the stuff, is for you people to have a source to get the stuff you need to get started. Because if you're not dressed the right way or have the right footwear and being prepared, you're not going to have a very good experience. And then it might make you quit. You might get cold and wet and you say, I'm not doing this again, or whatever. I guarantee if you start out with the right equipment where you're warm and comfortable and you're quiet, you can slip through the woods and hunt quietly, that's going to make a good experience for you, because you probably will get close to deer or other animals or something, you'll blend in. So yeah, that's a good one. Have your right clothing and equipment.
Something that's off topic a little bit, but it does go along with this, is one thing I've learned in my 25 years of guiding, and more like 35 for you. You can't judge a person. I've had guys that showed up that looked like they were in good shape, and I thought, man, I'm going to be able to train this guy, and he's going to be a big woods hunter. But if their attention span is short, or their expectations were too high or whatever, they're not going to make it. They come and they show up and they think, this ain't for me, and they don't come back. And I've had other guys that I thought, this chubby little guy, this ain't going to be for him. But maybe they get themselves in better shape, or maybe they're just somebody that surprises you by what they can do. But they're not quitters. We've talked about perseverance and persistence. Some guys, they've just got that drive in them. They're like, I'm going to make this happen. I don't care what I have to do, but I'm going to learn how to make this happen. And it's they set a goal. Really, if you come up here, you're probably not going to be, unless you glom onto one, you're probably not going to be successful your first time, especially your first time tracking. But if you've got that mindset that I really like this and I'm going to do this till I'm good at it, everybody can learn, right? That's how we should look at it.
Yeah, anybody can do it if they choose to. That's kind of like one of my new mottos now. I put that in my new seminar, is be the one that chooses to do it, because it's too easy, especially in this day and age. I think people give up on everything too easily, They come up against a little friction and they quit.
I'll give you, this is kind of a funny example, but I've learned it by, by following the Big Woods Post. Our society now, people's attention span is so short. Like, I like to read, so if I see something on Facebook or whatever, I'll read it and enjoy it or whatever. With most people, a picture will get hundreds of likes because they see that picture and, oh, that's a cool picture, and they hit like on it. But if they have to read something or they have to watch a video, and if you look at Big Woods, if you look at it'll tell you a picture is way more likely to get some mileage than anything else. Yeah. And
pictures, videos, everybody's visual.
Yeah.
But they can't read 1,500 words a minute like you.
Well, they don't have to. They just have to have the
They just
interest.
have to take more time to read, right?
Right. They just got to take the interest.
agree with that.
And again, I think we're in a world where people need instant gratification.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I'm looking at. People are looking for instant gratification. If you're looking for instant gratification, tracking deer in northern Maine is not going to be your game.
Or even hunting them, period, because even if you're going to go sit on a stump somewhere or a log, they ain't going to be one wandering by every half an hour and you're going to take your pick, Yeah. It doesn't work that way. But it was a good point about being in shape, because that's what I found guiding over the years is what initially people don't understand. If they're not in shape and can't travel at all, even if if you're going to be a stand hunter, the best place in the woods you might have found might be a mile in. Well, you got to get to it, or if you go on a guided hunt and the guide's taking you in, you got to be able to get there, That's how you're going to be successful. So be prepared for it. And again, part of that is don't just walk down the sidewalk to get in shape 4 or 5 miles a day. Everybody says, yeah, I've been walking 5 miles a day. I can tell right off if it's down the sidewalk or not. And even if there's different parts of Maine too, we're in the mountains and the ridges here, but there's other parts of Maine that are fairly level. It's easier going there. There's no question. I go over there. If I went up north in northern Maine and stuff where it's just rolling ridges, I can put on 10, 12 miles and, breaking a sweat, But up here, 10 or 12 miles in the mountain is a big day.
Yes.
And right now, at my age, I get pretty tucked at doing that. So, there's different terrains and stuff. But the thing that gets people the most is the blowdowns, right?
Yeah, because you got to.
The only place that has, not the only place, but probably really northern Maine and, maybe northern New Hampshire and the similar places. But everywhere else, the woods is, in New Brunswick when I used to hunt, they'd call it dirty. The woods is dirty in there. Like, it's dirty? Well, they meant that it was brushy or blowdowns. That's dirty to them. And they don't go there because you're stepping over blowdowns and going around them. And if you don't get in shape for that, at the end of the day, you're going to be pretty lamed up, tired.
Going to have hip pointers, your hips.
Yeah, stepping over. Because you don't generally just walk along. I'm pretty good at stepping over blowdowns because I got long legs. But for most people, you don't just step over and keep going. You pull up to it, swing one leg over, swing the other leg over, and then continue, right?
Yeah.
You do that all day long.
But to encourage people, and I think we might have talked about this when Brian Donaghy was on the podcast, but you and Brian Donaghy couldn't be any more different. He's built like a stump, and you're long and lean, but he can go right up Bald Mountain like you because he's got the mindset, and he's, and he might not look like he's in the same shape that a tall, skinny guy is, but he is. He's in wood shape because he's in the woods all the time.
Yeah, and he can carry his weight,
Yeah. Different people are built different. Yeah. My point is, you don't have to be built 6'3" and 195 pounds like you. You can be built different and still do it.
Hey, I've taken a lot of guys that were 6 foot and less lighter than me and couldn't get out of their own way.
Yeah.
It's not that. You just have to be in adequate shape to walk the way you need to, stepping over things, around things, you might be stepping on rocks and logs, tiptoeing along, and got to get used to hunting in the woods and you can practice that, you know what I mean? You can, but nobody does. They want to go out and hike down the road or the sidewalk or something and get in shape. And
I noticed the biggest thing, like you said, the hills. If you walk 5 miles a day, but it's on flat ground and it makes you think you're in shape. But the first time you get to a hill, you're like, boy, I'm not in the shape that I thought, because it's just different.
There's two things. Your legs have to be in shape and your lungs have to be in shape.
Cardio.
Both. Yeah, your cardio. You can't, one doesn't fix the other. You got to have it both.
And what goes along with that, and I know sometimes, like now because I'm guiding, by the time deer season rolls around, I'm in good shape. But I can remember back when I was younger, I would want to put on miles and stuff, and if I hadn't been in the woods a lot, when you're tired, you don't pay attention like you do. You're not as alert. Like if you're huffing, if you're climbing up Bald Mountain, or if you're climbing any mountain around here and you're huffing and puffing, you're not alert like you would be if you was in shape. You just don't pay attention the same way. It's different. You're not mentally alert.
Yeah, you're more focused on where's the next log you can sit on and take a break.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing I'd add to that is slow and steady wins the race. I've seen a lot of guys, they think they got to hurry to get up the hill and then take 3 breaks to get to the top. Don't do it that way. Just go your own pace, slow and steady, and don't stop. If you're just trying to get up to the top of the ridge, just go slow enough where you don't get into a sweat, you don't get your breathing up or your heart rate up, and whatever that pace is for you, it's for you. If it's a real slow pace in the beginning, it'll improve. You keep doing it, it'll improve. When I used to get ready for a sheep hunt or something, I've done that a couple of times, and I would go do the Bald Mountain hiking trail, because it's 3 miles up. You start up the road, which is really, really steep anyways, up the gravel, and then you get up through the woods to the fire tower site, and then you come down the other side. You could make a loop out of it, and it was 6 miles. And when I would start that off in the spring, say maybe June, I'd start 1st of June, I would have to stop. It would be, say it was probably 1.5 miles up the road and 1.5 miles to the top. So 3 miles for that portion. The first time I'd go, I might have to stop 3 or 4 times on the road in that 1.5 miles before I ever got in the woods on the trail. And then the next time I went, if I stopped 4 times the first time, I always gave myself a day in between. If you keep pushing your muscles every day, they don't have time to recover. You should start out slow and go, take a day off, do a day off, day off. But if it took me four times to stop going up the road, the next time I could probably do it stopping twice. And then by the 3rd or 4th time, I wouldn't stop at all. I might stop a couple of times going up, because it got real steep up in the top. Actually, there's a couple of ladder places up there where the fire tower guy had to go up ladders up the ledges. That's how steep it is. And then within 2 weeks of doing that, I could go up to the top, down over the back, do the 6 miles without stopping. And then all I worked on after that was getting a little faster at it. And then I would get it down to, I can't remember my times now, it's been a while. When I first started, I was probably 3 hours to go around that 6 miles. But I could get it down to 2. I could do that 6 miles up and down and around in 2 hours flat, and I couldn't get it any faster because it'd be dangerous. Because I'd be kind of like flying about as fast as you'd want to walk in the woods.
That's legging.
Yeah, without tripping and falling. Well, that's 3 miles an hour through the woods. Yeah. I mean, granted, you're on a trail. You're not jumping over stuff and tripping over as much stuff, but yeah. But start out slow and steady wins the race. Build up your wind, your leg muscles and all that. And do it plenty of time ahead. Don't head up and be out of shape and then find out you can't do what it takes. Kind of discouraging for you.
It's kind of funny you mentioned 6 miles because it was 4 years ago, so I'd have been 55. When I went to Alaska on the moose hunt, I thought, well, I might be on. And the first day we climbed a mountain out there that first day. But from my house out to the end of my road, and Linkletter's had a woodlot out that it was steep all the way down to Black Stream. So it was steep all the way down and all the way back. But I started out, I would just walk it all the way out and all the way back. So it was 1.5 miles, so it was 3 miles, and then I did it again. So it was 6 miles. I was doing it twice. And then I thought, I want to be in really good shape. So I started I had 3 or 4 chains in my truck. So I put my pack on, and I started out with one of the chains. And then by the time I was done, before we went to Alaska, I had 40 pounds of chain in my pack. And I would do that 6 miles with 40 pounds and it was, like I said, steep down and steep up. Not all, to the end of my road was mostly flat, but the last half of it was all downhill and all uphill. And another thing is, downhill, especially if you've got a bunch of chain in your pack, downhill is just as exertive because it's different, but it's, exertive to go downhill with a bunch.
I think it's more.
Yeah.
For me, it's easier to walk uphill than it is downhill. Yeah. You're using totally different muscles. You're pushing uphill, pushing off. Coming down, you're trying to stop yourself. Yeah. So every time you're kind of digging your heel in, and it's different muscles. But I always said it's easier for me to go up than down.
Yeah. Good practice, though.
Yeah.
I think we covered that one pretty good.
All right.
Okay, and the last one, I'm going to touch on this. This one's right up my alley.
All right, I'll sit here and keep quiet.
I'll mention you.
Okay.
It says, I've read that the 250 Savage with a 100-grain bullet used to be pretty popular in your area. If so, what are the opinions on it, and how does it perform? Thanks. Looking forward to a response.
Yeah, I got no opinion on that.
Yeah, Hal's got no opinion on it because Hal's married to his Remington pump and his 30-06, which is good because it works good and it's good. It's kind of funny. It happened to me the same way that it happened. There's a guy named Larry Cola, and he wrote a really famous book called Shots at Whitetails. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but
I had the book.
Yeah, he's from the Adirondacks, and of course their deer in the Adirondacks are smaller than ours too. But he ended up, the guys in his hunting club liked 300 Savages. That's what back then he was probably. I think that book might have been from the 40s. It was from quite a while ago, but he wanted a Savage 99 and 300 Savage, and they also a little known gun that they didn't make too many of them. It was a 1920. It was a bolt action Savage, but again, you could get it in 250 or 300. So he wanted one in 300, couldn't find one, but one of his buddies said, well, I got a 250. So he started hunting with that 250 Savage and shot quite a few deer with it and liked the way that it performed. And he thought it, for a 100-grain bullet, the older 250 Savages have a 1 in 14 twist. So you can't really shoot bullets much over 100 grains, at least if they're the pointed ones, long pointed ones. And the reason why I had that slow twist, it's kind of too bad when the guy that designed that cartridge for Savage, he wanted a 100-grain bullet at 2,800 feet per second, but Arthur Savage was into promotion, and he wanted the first commercial American cartridge that would break 3,000 feet per second, because it was just a little while before the 270. So they had to lower the bullet weight all the way down to 87 grains in order to make it get 3,000 feet per second, and that's why it had that, rate of twist 1 in 14. So, but Larry Cola found out, in his gun anyway, he started hand-loading 117-grain round nose, which is the heaviest back then. That was the heaviest bullet you could get in 25 caliber. So I can remember reading in his book that he hand-loaded 117-grain round nose in his, whether they were Remington Cole-Ox or Hornady round nose, could have been either one. So I ended up, was kind of the same way. My dad always had a 99 Savage and either 300 Savage or 308. Most of the time it was 308. And, but I ended up, I just happened to, I call it gomming on to something, just something that happens. I found a 99A, which is a thumb safety on the top, which I'm a lefty like you, And the lever safety on a 99 Savage is pretty awkward for a left-handed person, and you can't swap it out like you can on a Remington pump gun. So I found this 99A, and not only did it have the thumb safety on the top, but it had a 1 in 10 twist barrel. They had decided that, in the later ones, starting probably in the 60s or 70s, they started putting a 1 in 10 twist barrel on it. So when I first got it, I actually shot 2 or 3 big bucks with 100 grain Remington core locks. And I didn't have any trouble, I never had to shoot one up the butt with it. Most of them were either quartering or they were broadside, or I had good shots at them. And so I never had problems killing those bucks with the 100 grain bullet. But in the back of my mind, I thought I'd like to get a heavier bullet. So I got the dies and everything and started hand loading. I hand load 120 grain Nosler Petitions. That's the heaviest bullet you can get for those 25s. So the Nosler Petition is, the back half of it doesn't expand, but the front half is actually pretty soft and it expands well. So what I found when I was shooting my bucks with it was it expanded quickly enough that those deer were going down pretty quick, but the back half of that bullet, and it's actually more than half, punches a hole and will go right out. So I've shot quite a few big bucks with it, and even if I shot them through the shoulders, it would still punch a hole out the other side. So not everybody wants a 25 caliber. Most guys want a 270 or bigger, and that's fine. But because the gun fit me well, and I invested in, hand loading for it and everything, I've shot a lot of big bucks with my 250. But a little bit more to the story. Last year, just happened to be the way it happened. I gave Steven, I found a 99A, that's the model, in 308. My father actually found it in Uncle Henry's, and we went up north of Bangor to pick it. I can't remember, we might have been like up in Lincoln. And the guy said 99A, 308, like new. Well, like new to me is, I'm pretty fussy about my guns. So when I talked with the guy on the phone, he said, oh no, it's like new. Well, I got up there and sure enough it was. I don't think it had ever been hunted with. The thing was like new. So I ended up, when Stephen was gone in the Marine Corps, he always hunted with a 99 when he was in high school. He hunted with a 99 in 30-30, and he always used 170 grain Remington core locks and never had any trouble. He always shot a bunch of deer. Well, while he was gone in the Marine Corps, Christine started using that 99 30-30 and liked it because it's got a short barrel, and it's from the 1920s, and people back then were smaller, and the stocks usually on those old guns, the stocks are at least a half inch to an inch shorter, so it fit her good. So when Stephen got back from the Marine Corps, I gave Christine the 30-30 and gave him that 99 and 308. Well, last year when Andy Larson came out with that 1-4 compact scope, I said, well, I'll put that, because I had my gun set up the way I wanted, but I said, I'll put that 1-4 compact scope on Stevens 99 308. And so I did that. And people know the story now because we've done a podcast on it. But my dad died on Veterans Day, and my dad's favorite deer gun was a 99 and 308. He shot a bunch of big deer with it. So about a week after my dad passed, I was carrying that 99 and 308, but it's just exactly like my 250, except it's in 308. And so I shot that nice buck with it last year. And I would actually tell people, if you're worried about it, get one in 308 if you can find one, because, a 308 definitely does have more power than a 250. But with my hand loads, I've never had any trouble killing my deer with it. So
Did they make that 250 Savage? Is that a neck down 300 Savage?
Nope, it's a little bit different case, and the 250 came out before the 300, but I think they're both, if you look at them side by side, they're a little bit different. But something that's kind of funny is that 6.5 Creedmoor, which is all the rage now. Everybody wants a 6.5 Creedmoor. There's a guy, his name was Ackley, P.O. Ackley. He was a custom gunsmith from New York. He used to take the 250 Savage, and if you wanted a little more power, he blew that 250 Savage out, and they call it a 250 Ackley Improved. And if you take a 250 Ackley improved and neck it from 25 up to 6.5, guess what it makes? A 6.5 Creedmoor.
No kidding.
So,
That's how it was made?
Yeah. Well, no, they actually do it. It's a different. This is another funny story. Is Thompson Center, before they went out of business, they called it a 30 TC. It looks like a 308, only shorter, but it had 308 ballistics and a shorter. So when they did the 6.5 Creedmoor, that 30 TC never took off. It never became popular, and people were like, well, why would I want to switch from a 308? It's basically the same thing. It's a different case, but basically the same thing. And then, of course, Thompson Center went out of business, and they stopped making the guns for it and everything. But they took that 30 TC and necked it down to 6.5 Creedmoor. And, I mean, they've sold millions of them. That's the whole story. So nobody would know that but me, but...
That's like Paul Harvey would say, that's the rest of the story.
That's the rest of the story.
Yeah, good stuff. All right. I don't know what else we can add to that.
Yeah, that was a mouthful.
As you know, Lee is a walking encyclopedia. That's why I got to ask him them questions. Is it a neck down 300 Savage? Because that would be to me the obvious way it would be made, but it's not.
Well, it's just a little bit different, and that's not how they came up with it. But this is part of the story too. The reason why the 308 came into existence was in a semi-automatic. The shorter your cartridge, the less likely it is to jam. And so when the military decided they want to shorten up the 30-06, they decided, so they actually studied the 300 Savage before they had a 308. And again, it's just a little bit different, but a 300 Savage is pretty similar to 308, except for the 308 has a longer neck. And that's why it's a little bit more, just like the 30-06 is a little bit more than a 308. A 308's a little bit more than a 300 Savage.
Yeah, that's ironically, I used to think I never had a 300 Savage, or I never knew anybody that hunted with a 300 Savage when I was a kid. You know, none of the family had one, so I didn't know anything about it. But I just equated it for some reason in my mind, maybe because it was a lever and stuff, that it was like a 30-30. I didn't realize it was a lot more powerful than a 30-30.
Yep.
More closer to a 308. I never knew that till I don't think I knew that till I bought that one for Ryland, the pump, Yeah. And I asked you about it. Yeah.
Well, they got the whole family up here, the whole Giroux family in Jackman.
Oh, yeah.
That's all they used, right, was a 300 Savage.
Yeah, I think they all still do. Yeah. Yeah. They think they've killed a few of them.
I think they have too. I think Ryland's going to kill someone. I love that little gun that you.
Yeah.
That's a sweetheart of a gun.
Yeah.
You said he's pretty well hooked on it too, huh?
I told you I bought a 760 carbine in 308. Pretty nice, like been hunted with a little bit, but the blue one was good, and it was. So I asked Ryland. I said, I got this 308. I said, if you'd rather have that than your 300 Savage, I said, I'll give you that one and sell the other one. He goes, nope. I like my gun. He said, it's doing good for me. And I said, that's the gun I'm going to hunt with. I go, yep, good enough.
Yep. And for the way that we hunt, I don't want to drag this out too much, but it annoyed me a little bit. But one of the podcasts that we did, we talked about how we shoot almost everything at 75 yards. And, if you could keep all your bullets inside an 8-inch circle, which really means that you're not more than 4 inches off either way. But if you aim at a deer's shoulder, and if you can keep all your bullets in an 8-inch circle, 75 yards, you're going to kill stuff. And some people, they just couldn't get that for some reason.
No, I know. I tell people I'd rather guide someone that could shoot their 5 shots and hit an 8-inch circle or even a pie plate at 50 yards and do it in 10 seconds than somebody that could cut holes at 100 yards.
Off a bench.
Yeah, that would take a minute to do it because it's not the way we hunt, you know?
Yeah, it's just different. And then some of the comments on it were good. Like a guy said, well, I kill most all of my deer at 200 yards. And I understand that. It all depends on where you live. If you live out west and you're in open country, you're probably going to kill a lot at 200 yards. But our podcast is about hunting whitetails, and mostly in northern Maine or
In the
but
woods.
even in the Adirondacks, they may shoot a little further in the Adirondacks because it's more open.
Yeah, they
country,
shoot
but-
further on average, and that's why a lot more of those guys like their scopes because they got a lot of open hardwoods.
But up here, 75 yards, I mean, it covers 90% of your shooting. It really does.
Yeah. And the other thing, that's the thing too, is people are too much into bench resting their guns and trying to cut holes with it. It's meaningless if you're going hunting. Even if you got a scope, whatever, because you ain't going to have a bench rest out in the woods with you. If you don't pick up your gun and shoot offhand.
Yeah. We encourage you to sight your gun off the bench to make sure the gun's shooting good.
Yeah.
But after that, I've told this story. I used to buy Steven, one reason why I wanted to get him the 30-30, I could go to Walmart and get him 3 boxes of ammo for $9.99. Back then it was $9.99 a box for 30-30. We'd walk around out in the woods behind my house. I did it the whole time he was a kid growing up. We'd walk out on my land, and some of it was on my neighbor's land, and have him shoot at stuff, different angles, but standing up, just like you would in a hunt situation. Have him shoot a box or 2 before the season, and then he'd still have a full box for hunting season. That's how I trained him.
Yeah. If you shoot offhand and shoot quickly that way and don't think about breathing, control, slow trigger squeeze, you just snap the trigger, you'll be surprised how steady you can hold.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, incredibly steady. Just the reason people miss all the time like that is because they don't practice that way. So if they've got to try to, follow a deer or try to get it on a deer that's standing there, they get shaken around too much and then they're done. But if you just put it up and shoot within a couple of seconds or a second or two, then it isn't going to wiggle. I go out on my deck with a 22, and I didn't even got a peep sight. It's got the buckhorn sight. It's one of them Remington little semi-automatics. It's just my corner of the door gun, it's got a 10-round magazine of 22, and I can shoot squirrels out of the feeders at 30 and sometimes 40 yards with that open sight. And a red squirrel, when I say squirrels, I mean red squirrels, and they're like the size of a chipmunk. I don't say I hit them every time, but I mean, I can pick them off half the time, kill them things, and I just shoot quick, So it's good practice, though, shooting quick, red squirrels.
Yeah, it is.
All right. Well, I hope we answered some of your questions. I know you didn't all ask them, but maybe some of you had the questions, and we had fun with that chat. Getting warmed up for deer season. It's not going to be long.
Nope, it won't be. I can't believe it. In 2 weeks, I'm going to be guiding bear hunters.
Not just you. Yeah. So anyways, thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this one. Be sure to support our sponsors, and if you're new at it, hit the subscribe and check out our new website. Sign up for your email blasts and get out there, enjoy the rest of the summer, and get ready for deer season. Till next time, good luck on the trail.